Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to our second trade-related webinar as part of our series of maritime sector-related conversations hosted by the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport in Singapore. My name is Siddharth Adia. I am a director with CILT Singapore, and I will be the moderator for our discussion this morning. Now, I see we still have some people dialing in, and as we wait, I would like to thank you all for your time and interest in joining our discussion this morning and for sending us your questions prior to this event. As per previous practice, the speakers have tried to address quite a few of the questions in their respective presentations already. That said, please do keep the questions coming in through the chat function, and we will endeavor to take on a few once the speakers have gone through their respective presentations. But time is limited, so for those that we're unable to cover today, we will ensure that we post a response from our panel of experts post the event. Now, the topic of today's discussion is supply chain and logistics, a sector that has seen much interest as it faced unprecedented challenges over the past few years. A confluence of events from the pandemic to geopolitical tensions has caused significant disruptions to supply chains across the globe. And while these issues brought to light previously unseen weaknesses or gaps in global operating networks, they also serve to accelerate and magnify problems that perhaps already existed in global supply chains as levels of complexity have grown over the years. In the aftermath of severe disruption from the COVID-19 pandemic, where we saw reports of shortages and market disruption as billions of dollars worth of inventory lay blocked or idling in warehouses or onboard vessels, recent surveys now suggest that global enterprises have taken a serious view. Survey respondents talk of plans to shake up their regional and global supply chain strategies to become more resilient, sustainable, and collaborative with customers, suppliers, and other stakeholders. But to do all that, they will need to increase both investment and adoption of supply chain technologies like AI and analytics, robotic process automation, or RPAs, and control towers, while retaining and, more importantly, retraining workers. So how does all that play out for this year and in coming years, and how are key market participants responding to these changes? It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our panel of experts for today, who, with their wide-ranging and global industry experience, will share perspectives on the current state of the industry and also how they expect it may evolve in coming years. So without further delay, I'd like to invite Mr. Waldo Basila, Chief Commercial and Operations Officer for Greater Asia Region at APL Logistics, to start us off with his views on the industry. Now, APL Logistics is a global 3PL and a preferred partner to many global corporations, providing innovative supply chain solutions across automotive, consumer, industrial, and retail markets. So I'm sure, Waldo, you will have some very interesting perspectives to share with us all. Waldo, over to you, please.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you very much, Siddharth. Let me share my screen. Please let me know if you see it.
Yeah, Waldo, we're good.
All right, hold on. Hold on. All right. Okay. Thank you very much again. It was my pleasure, and it's an honor for me to be here with you, the CILT. I also want to thank you, Siddharth, the director for CILT. I also want to thank our chairman, Karamjit Singh, and our board of director, Mr. Edward Lau, for allowing me to be part of this webinar. It gives me great pleasure to be able to share some of our thoughts around the supply chain trends that we see and how we think APL Logistics can help our customers respond to it. We are all coming from the most dramatic events of our lives. The COVID pandemic has also significantly upended global supply chains. We saw the closing down of economies completely and intermittently. And then thereafter, we're also confronted with the war in Ukraine that brought with it rising inflation, unstable supply, and even more uncertain demand, making 2023 truly a year of uncertainty. The global economy is slowing down, as we all know. The demand for physical goods is on the downtrend. I'd like to share the recent CEIC report on export indices from leading export countries in Asia, including China, Vietnam, Taiwan, and South Korea, which are all showing a downturn of exports in the first half of the year of 2023, which is indicating a slowdown of global demand of physical goods. Unfortunately, the outlook doesn't look too good either. In July, I attended a conference hosted by the Mizuho Bank here in Singapore, and they reported that with the reopening of the economies, there seems to be a rebalancing of consumption trends. And that's maybe because we had been locked down for so long during the COVID that the reopening, which was supposed to boost demand for physical goods, we've seen the less demand for discretionary purchases as the dollar spending has shifted more to basic products like food, fuel, and also more relevant to us is experience, services, including travel and restaurants. Like if you go around Singapore and even within Asia, you'll see this hotels are full, restaurants are full. The chart on the bottom right of the slide illustrates this rebalancing of consumption. The global services PMI into the middle of this year is on the upward trajectory, while the inverse is happening to the global manufacturing PMI, which sits below 50, which is an indication of contraction. As you all know, the PMI is a survey or a leading indicator that predicts manufacturing or services output in the 6 months from now. As such, the 2 or 3 year historical information or product demand that we've experienced is no longer a good basis for demand planning for this year. Demand has become very volatile, with a few retailers that I've spoken to expressing now uncertainty of how to manage their inventory flows. In fact, I've been talking to many large retailers globally who have this year initially assumed that the excess inventory that was accumulated last year had been accumulated first part of last year would have been consumed by now, and they will start replenishing the second half of the year. Unfortunately, however, this is not the case. Orders have been put on hold or postponed because forecasts remain weak this year. Last week, I was in the US to reassess our growth potentials for next year. And unfortunately, the general consensus is that demand will remain flat into 2024. Also, in discussing with HSBC Bank, they report that the companies that they're working with are also uncertain on how to manage inventory because they try to straddle between the thin line between building up inventory and stocking for just in case. Okay, so quite complex as you move to manage demand. At the same time, because of the COVID lockdowns that we experienced the past 3 years, the geopolitical tensions, companies are restructuring their supply chains by diversifying sourcing. With different degrees of intensities, we're seeing companies shifting their sourcing to others in Asia and sometimes globally to mitigate any potential risks in the future. These shifts impact not only affect finished goods flow, but also influence the material flow required to support the manufacturing. With new factories and extended supply chains, companies now need to understand the new operating landscapes and implications of these changes to the lead times of their products, the total landed cost, considering now they're operating under new trade agreements within new geographies. With the expanding ecosystems and the unreliability of carrier transportation, which a lot of us have experienced, the constrained capacity or reduced frequencies, there is also an increased need for visibility and collaboration in this new ecosystem to be able to manage the movement of finished goods, intermediate products, and raw materials to ensure that they flow on time. The ability to read and react to contingencies has become very important because the manufacturer ecosystems, as mentioned, has now been fully extended. Finally, but equally important, is the increased focus on sustainability. As we all grapple with the changing environment, we continue to be challenged by our internal and external stakeholders, customers of our customers, to be cognizant that while we operate under these complex supply chains, we need to execute with the minimum CO2 emissions. Okay, moving track a little bit. Many of you are probably not fans of Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, and some have already probably deactivated your Facebook accounts. But I think Mark Zuckerberg hit the nail on the head when he said that the early part of this year, that demand will be a challenge and that 2023 will be a year of efficiency. At this point, I'd like to share a survey that was conducted not by ourselves, but by people with the supply chain industry, performed with key executives globally from different verticals as to what operational priorities they will take on in 2023 in the year of efficiency. The left column speaks to the top 5 priorities. Very clearly, 83% identified cost reduction now is a top priority. 75% highlighted the need to automate processes. Siddharth speak about RPAs and all that. Eliminate manual processes, introduce analytics to improve costs and enhance insights. 66% want to integrate the planning process to include different key stakeholders in one company enabled by technology. This is very interesting. We were in Australia 2 weeks ago, maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago, also hosting a customer event. And this came out very importantly, where different stakeholders within a company are fragmented and they do not speak together with regards to managing the inventory flow. 54% now talked about reducing inventory levels after a few years of looking into increased inventory, and 52% have highlighted sustainability as a priority. On the right side of the slide, you'll see the question was posed as to what investments would they were looked into to support these priorities. 75% of the executives talk about investing in end-to-end visibility solutions to help them track and their products through the value chain. And the next 4 items all speak to aligning their planning, optimizing their product flows to meet the difficult demand fluctuations while optimizing costs. This includes supply chain planning, demand forecasting, network optimization, especially the use of supply chain structures, and inventory management. Okay. At this point, additionally, I also would like to share with you another survey conducted by another global consulting firm, this time asking 113 global companies what supply chain strategies they plan to deploy post-COVID, right? Majority of the responses converge around a singular thing, that of building a resilient supply chain using inventory planning strategies, implementing new sourcing strategies, and increasing focus on improving visibility and planning. If looking at this slide, in 2021, increasing inventory was the norm to build resiliency. However, today, this survey was taken latter part of 2022. 71% of the respondents now to look at how to keep inventory costs under control. Interestingly, 52 to 90%, depending on the work industries, want to revise their inventory strategy levels to what they've implemented during COVID. 10 to 27% want to revert back to pre-COVID inventories, and up to 18%, especially around with the automotive industry, also want to even decrease inventory than pre-COVID levels. Companies have also learned their lesson during COVID. To avoid future lockdowns, geopolitical concerns, companies want to build resilience by implementing dual sourcing strategies. These strategies refer to sourcing raw materials and manufacturing from different regions to improve diversification and manage risk. And some of you are very familiar with strategies like, especially for global companies, they try to embark on a China +1, among others. 81%, in this survey, 81% of the companies say that they've actually implemented this. The second part of this chart, on the bottom part of this chart, talks about looking at regional supply chain networks to ensure that products are close to market. These strategies may be, for example, will include sourcing and selling within the same geography. For example, that could be a China for China policy, nearshoring, or even friendshoring. Some people call it friendshoring to countries of the same political beliefs. However, according to the EIU, this may be easier said than done because of the high cost of manufacturing for certain products and alternative sources where people look to source from. However, 40% said that they're still looking at working to execute this in the next 3 years. Global leaders are looking on increasing focus on planning and visibility strategies post-COVID. 67%, similar to the previous survey, also talk about implementing an end-to-end visibility. But this survey actually says these customers have already implemented this and in fact have started to implement visibility dashboards, right? However, what I'd like to call out in this survey is it also highlights that people are looking now at scenario planning tools. This capability have not been very vital in the past, But however, due to the many changes in flows, extended supply chains, and the need to respond quickly, this has become a critical ability to manage and design the flow options to ensure products are delivered in full and in time. The executives of this survey also mentioned the need to increase digitalization efforts with focus on inventory management. The next big step, and this I know has been a goal of many people in the past, is how do you capture the demand signal as accurate as possible to help you manage inventory. Thus, there is an increased need for demand and supply chain planning, inventory management tools to ensure optimal balance of inventory. Finally, in this survey, this also speaks about the need to increase visibility upstream. A lot of us talk about visibility from shipment or factory to DC or store. However, 83% of respondents have said that material shortages have ultimately impacted their ability to deliver their finished goods on time. Only 45% of respondents have visibility to tier 1 suppliers, and thus the rest are unable to react if problems arise beyond that. I'd like to share this time the implications of dual sourcing. The dual sourcing strategies have now resulted to some obvious outcomes. The strategy implemented by global companies to the risk, coupled by the desire of Chinese companies to reach out to growing ASEAN market and minimize their dependence on the Western markets, has made the ASEAN the largest trading partner of China since 2020. The manufacturing shift has resulted to an increasing amount of movement of intermediate products from China to the ASEAN to support final assembly. And with the recent signing of RCEP, we expect this trend to further increase as tariff barriers are further reduced or hopefully finally eliminated. Further, and on the regionalization front, this regionalization of supply chains have also seen as interesting development. As companies try to source or manufacture in countries nearer to consuming market, we're seeing Chinese factories moving to Mexico in increasing numbers, possibly also to avail of the lower tariffs of products manufactured here and to improve access to North American markets. You will note on this slide that by 2021, there had been a dramatic increase of FDI in Mexico by Chinese companies. Although the investment remains small by comparison to the overall FDI into Mexico, this signifies the new and evolving trend of the East to West trade dynamics. AP Logistics have been significantly involved in facilitating the movements of products from Mexico to the USA and also from China into Mexico as we speak. I hope at this time I was able to at least share a bit of what I shared confirms what the post-COVID environment has become increasingly complex. And it points to, I believe, the need for new and upgraded supply chain approaches to manage inventory while ensuring visibility and connectivity to the extended supply chains. And APL Logistics aspires to help companies navigate through that. And I'd like to give you a quick introduction, given the time I have here, of who APL Logistics is, right? We are an order management leader in the order management space. As part of our maxims, we aspire to be the premier provider globally. We provide solution in the retail, consumer, industrial, and automotive spaces. We are part of the KWE Group, which is a global leader in air freight and sea freight forwarding. But unlike our parent company, KWE, APLL positions itself as a neutral player whose main intention is to work with customers and our customers' freight partners to ensure our partners moves products from production to consumption. We are in 60 countries globally, and we move more than 8 million orders, PO lines annually. We are proud to also share that was a recognition of our efforts to improve the working cultures of our employees. We were awarded Best Companies to Work For in 23 and 22 in China, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Indonesia, in Singapore, where we are, and recently in Sri Lanka. For APLL, to help our customers cope with the changing environment, we offer a holistic solution package that includes advanced order planning, enhanced visibility and control, and we help execute shipments based on customers' business rules. The key objective of APLL is to deliver products in full and on time at the best cost for our customers and the lowest CO2 emissions as possible. Given today's trading conditions of uncertain demand and excess inventory, companies need to be more deliberate and precise in moving its products to ensure they optimize costs and, as much as possible, match product flow to demand. APL's role is to ensure companies are able to execute a more demand-driven, cost-efficient supply chain that optimizes results for a company. Our approach is holistic. It includes a broad network of physical and digital solutions that include having strategic nodes and hubs as catchments around Asia to manage inventory flows. We manage complex multimodal transport solutions, leveraging best-in-class providers because, as you recall, as I mentioned earlier, we are a neutral party to ensure we connect the nodes to support a flexible flow model. We have control tower solutions, and we leverage our leading visibility and collaboration technology, enabling a more demand-driven inventory model that matches actual demand and demand requirements. Given the time that I have, Siddharth, and to everyone, I'd like to end my presentation here. And I hope, given the brief time that I had, I was able to share some thoughts to ponder on given the current environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Waldo, for that very interesting presentation. Sorry, I'm just trying to, there you go. For that very interesting presentation and a lot of key points there for us all to consider. And APL Logistics obviously at the forefront in trying to service those global customer requirements. So thanks again, and I'm sure we'll have a couple of questions at the end of the session. So we'll probably get some more perspectives from you then. Now, next, I'd like to invite Mr. Chris Edwards, Senior Vice President, Asia Pacific at One Network Enterprises, to share his views. One Network Enterprises is a global leader in supply chain control task solutions and a provider of the digital supply chain network. Now, Chris, digital platforms and process automation, we're told, can unlock significant value across the industry. And recent research, as I read from the World Economic Forum, tells us that digital platforms will become increasingly important in the logistics industry, with data indicating that there is perhaps as high as $1.5 trillion of value at stake for logistics players as a result of digital transformation of the industry up until 2025. So big numbers and suggesting huge scope for growth. So we're very keen to hear from you, Chris, on how you see the industry shaping up in coming years. So over to you, Chris, and look forward to your insights.
Thanks, Siddharth. Thanks, everybody. Let me just share my screen. Okay, can you see that yet? Should be coming up.
Yeah, we have you, Chris.
Excellent. So thanks very much. Siddharth and team, thanks very much for allowing me this opportunity to present. One of the nice things about these opportunities is that we take the time to think about what it is that we do and how we service our customers differently. What you'll see from this presentation is that there's a lot of commonality in terms of the points that have been made by Waldo, and there's probably a good theme that's moving forward through this presentation. Just having some technical difficulties. Can you still see my screen there?
Yes,
Siddharth?
we can.
Excellent.
Yes.
So some of those themes, which we'll talk about in a moment, include end-to-end visibility, the subject of bringing planning and execution together, network optimization, and cost of goods sold and trying to reduce them. And then, of course, the overarching subject of resilience and risk avoidance. We're going to talk more about the technology in this presentation. So let's get into that. And the themes and topics that we're going to move through are challenges, trends, and value. Now, as you might appreciate, there is a lot of things that we can talk about. So trying to distill that down into a 15-minute presentation is challenging. But I think for the supply chain practitioners and others in academic domains, you will start to see a common theme extending from what Waldo said through myself and to Varun, where there are the exchanges between participants in what we call supply chains is really more of a network approach. There are certain trends in terms of the rise of AI and machine learning, although we'll speak more about AI. And then, of course, the value, because what we've learned through our journey is that if there's not value to all of the participants in the network, then the value, the benefit that can be realized by the end customer is limited. Everybody understands what this diagram represents. It represents a network of participants aimed at providing the consumer on the left-hand side the best possible outcome. So regardless of sector, they could be pharmaceutical, they could be automotive, they could be CPG or heavy industrial. The consumer at the end of the day wants their goods on time and in full. And organisations like APL Logistics are key to that. Key to it also are all of the participants in the network, including over to the right-hand side of the diagram, the different tiers of supply. A theme that will come out of my presentation is that, yes, demand and having that signal is important. It is then very important to ensure that that signal of demand is able to be optimized, communicated in the first instance, and then optimized, of course, across the various means of supply. Now, a challenge, because we're on that area of the topics, a challenge is, of course, communicating that demand to the various participants in the network. Oftentimes, all the different participants have their own technology and they do their plans and they optimize their plans within their own organization and then pass that plan to their supplier, whatever tier it might be. It might be a purely logistics provider, so there's a capacity understanding required of equipment. Then, of course, manufacturing and tiers 1, 2, and 3 suppliers in terms of what they're able to bring into that process. So the translation of that demand and its ability to be passed near real time is becoming more and more critical to that outcome. And what's the outcome? The outcome is the goods to the consumer at the lowest possible cost so that their satisfaction is guaranteed. Then the early visibility of disruption. As we've spoken about the pandemic and what's that, and the impacts that has had on our personal lives and, of course, our professional lives. And that is that while we have a tremendous view now of demand, moreover, the ability to match that with the view of supply, and when supply is disrupted, is becoming more and more important. I think, Waldo, thanks, great presentation, just going back to some of the points you've made there in terms of being able to right-size the amount of supply in these networks to ensure that the optimized level of inventory is within the network to satisfy demand. And that's what we're sensing as well. We're sensing in our client base and our prospect base that very issue of having the right amount of inventory, the supply assurance at the various tiers to ensure that the customer at the end of the day, and the customer is not always the end customer on the left, as we all well know. The customer might be a contract manufacturer. The customer might be a 3PL in the middle, providing a service to a variety of organizations on a distribution network. So let's just take a moment and let's just rethink or take that moment to think about, this is a very complex network paradigm within which we live. The days of vertical organizations have largely gone. Horizontal network approaches where contract manufacturers are often bigger than the brands they supply. That's the world we live in. And so it very much is a collaboration. I can remember that term being used just a moment ago. Collaboration, working and exchanging information between the various network participants is certainly some of the challenges of achieving that single version of truth, and often control towers and other technologies are used to do that. So the value problems can be summarized in a very rudimentary sense, I guess. Service level and COGS, cost of goods sold, that is, understanding that we are in a multi-tier supply world and the challenges of supply at those different tiers. So near sourcing, multiple sources of supply for similar or like items, Then, of course, there's ESG, which is becoming much more prominent in terms of requirement. It's always been a requirement, but it's more prominent now. And then, of course, the real-time and incremental optimization. So these are some of the themes of challenge that we'd like to drill into a little bit more through this presentation. And again, surveys, we participate in surveys all the time. Our customers do. The sectors that we support, I mentioned pharmaceutical, auto, CPG, even defense and heavy industrial. Similar challenges in the supply chains are under pressure. A lot of new product introduction. That brings with it, if you look at the telecommunication, the high-tech sectors, that mere fact of regular new product introduction creates its own challenges, particularly in the area of master data management, bill of material translation between tiers of supplier. On time and full availability, absolutely top of the list still. It keeps everybody awake is, am I going to be able to run that production schedule as I plan to, because I have the assured supply and my tier 2 supplier is going to deliver on time. Yield, quality, again, high tech, pharmaceutical, it really doesn't matter. The sectors that require that opportunity to look into my supply network and understand that the quality of product inbound is what I expect. External supply, is that assured? And then capacity constraints of my network participants. If I'm a brand, if I'm a contract manufacturer, it doesn't matter. I need to ensure that my participants in my extended enterprise are able to exchange information on a near real-time basis with me and my downstream customers so that I can assure them of the supply that I'm contracted for. So now that we've spoken about some of the challenges, those challenges then need to be accommodated. Now, we'll talk about, we've spoken about information exchange between the different tiers. Now, the rise of AI, as we like to refer to it, can only come about through the introduction of technology that is able to access the level of data necessary to execute artificial intelligence. Data is, as I think my first slide said, it is the new oil. It keeps us moving. It allows us to collaborate. It allows us to interact to those levels necessary in an unprecedented way almost, because we're running at velocities and volumes of transactions at such a high degree now, because we are operating as networks and horizontal networks more than vertical companies of the old. That AI desperately requires clean data, near real-time data, and once it's available, can do wonderful things for those networks. If we go back to the 50s, artificial intelligence as a term was coined by John McCarthy. The three areas of reasoning, making decisions, and taking actions. Now, as human beings, it's only natural that we will look at something like AI and consider our own futures and consider whether or not artificial intelligence is a threat or an opportunity. In terms of reasoning and making decisions, if the data is available, us as human beings can apply our technology to ensure that that artificial intelligence is of use. But it's the taking of the actions that I would like to hone in on is a particular area that artificial intelligence in the right setting can help us with. So autonomous supply chain management, we're not there yet, I would assure you. Autonomous means hands off, but we are moving closer to those opportunities where those networks where there's lots of volume, where there is a great deal of resilience obtained only through the ability to react to adverse events. That application of artificial intelligence really is helping. But it then allows us to bring those events that the AI cannot resolve to a human being, not only as a forward-looking avoidance of an adverse event, but also with prescriptive ways of resolving to avoid the event altogether. And I think that's where the foundations and requirements for autonomous supply chain management is very, very important to understand. And I think, again, going back to Waldo's comments about control tower technology, having that full digital representation of your network, if you have an extended enterprise of suppliers, customers, and third-party logistics providers, etc., having that full digital representation of the network is important. Having the ability to exchange real-time information community-wide across all of the participants. Dual platform strategy is often important as well. What that means is that you will have technology that may be extending and sitting across the extended enterprise, but you will still always have back office applications and systems of record that need to work. So there's really a dual platform strategy often employed. The control tower idea has been around for some time, but fortunately now the technology is available not only to provide visibility, but provide visibility looking forward, not rearward, and also bring that planning and visibility together with the world of execution. And so while visibility is a foundation or cornerstone, the ability to execute against that data is vitally important. So that's the full actionability point at the end of the slide there. Having a visibility of something that's occurred in the past, not very useful. Having visibility of an event that may occur in the future and disrupt my sector of network, that's vitally important. But then being able to enact actions to have that event not occur at all, or have its impact on my network mitigated, that's a much, much better outcome. So what we see is the 7 keys to success within AI in supply chain. Access to the real-time data. Data is the new oil. Access to community data. So accessing the right information with my partners, being able to share with my partners, not just a purchase order, but if I'm introducing a new item, I need to share with them detailed information about the new item of supply that I'm looking to bring into my network and what the implications are for them and their tier 2, tier 3 suppliers. So support for network-wide objectives. I want value for my customers. I need value to be translated then to my suppliers and participants in terms of logistics. Decision process must be incremental. We can't make decisions where we're disrupting other parts of our network to satisfy a small challenge within the network. So being able to be precise, being able to incrementally replan and execute on a very frequent basis is becoming a cornerstone of modern supply chains. Decision processes must be continuous and self-learning. Now, we are at the forefront of that with artificial intelligence algorithms being injected into these networks now that we have the data and we have the multi-party technology to represent all of the participants in the network. Self-learning, learning what a human being does. So if a human being 8 times out of 10 to solve a problem does the same thing, well, then let's take that learning and then apply that to our artificial intelligence algorithms in the first place. AI engines must be highly scalable. We've spoken earlier about these networks, how vast they are, the volume of data that's being exchanged between them. They must be scalable and there must be a way for users to engage the AI. So having users via a complex user interface and being able to bring to that user something that they can understand quickly and then react to is vitally important. Here is a representation of a network and the flows and exchanges between order orchestration, checking inventory, checking on freight capacity, and then closing the loop. On the left-hand side, we have the autonomous processes and moving those up into the exceptions and alerts. So coming back to that question of, is AI good for us? Is AI going to be a problem? Is it a threat? Or is it an opportunity? We see it as an opportunity. We see this as an opportunity to deal with the volume of transactions, the volume of data, the exchanges between different participants in the network, and then we can see it bringing to the human being only those problems that the AI can't solve, bringing to the human being so they can apply their intellectual capital, their experience, their understanding of that AI will never have of their network, and allowing them the opportunity to make those informed decisions on a timely basis. So moving those autonomous processes to the exceptions via alerts to the human being when required. So by connecting all parties through these control tower technologies, we've seen this in the past, these points being made. What we want to do is ultimately move to the point on the right-hand side, which is mitigating risk. Mitigating risk is looking forward. It's avoiding those events that are potentially going to disrupt my network. So coming to the conclusions and the end of this presentation, I just wanted to remind us the pillars of high-performing supply chain. We've spoken about visibility. Visibility, though, I have to say, is not the end game. It is a challenge. It definitely is. And as technologies have vastly improved to support visibility, the biggest challenge now is to have the different participants in a network, be it a sector network, be it a regional geography network of a particular brand, is to bring along the customers and bring along the suppliers and bring along the logistics providers to collaborate and earn value. That's more of the challenge that we see. The technology now has been around and is somewhat mature on the visibility front. So that collaboration point 2 is the articulation of the value to the different participants. Once they all participate on a digital network, understanding that there is in fact value, not only for the customer, but for every customer at the different tiers of supply. Embracing the technology to optimize the ecosystem is still a challenge, but it is becoming easier, particularly as integration technologies and the underpinning applications are becoming more mature and more modern. Embracing and integrating the various technologies is becoming easier, and optimizing the outcome. So again, a pillar of a high-performing supply chain is, having achieved all of those 1 through 3 points, is then optimizing the outcomes, applying artificial intelligence in the network, and then optimizing the amount of inventory that might be in the network necessary to meet production, customer expectation, and then avoiding those adverse events. Again, going back to COVID, it has proven to us that we can understand our demand requirements. And as they, in some cases, fell off a cliff, that's good. We can understand that. But as we come out of COVID and as we're experiencing now, to understand the available supply and then how to optimize that with demand, as demand may be flat or trending down, how do I optimize the amount of inventory and network supply that I have? So in closing, we come to the last point, and that is the value for all. The value for all ecosystem ensures buy-in. It drives transformation and maturity on the different participants. So identifying all the participants in your network, defining the value proposition for each is vitally important. So thanks. I'm pretty sure I've run slightly over time there, Sid. Back to you now. Thanks very much. And I look forward to any of the questions that we might have. Again, thanks for this opportunity. It's been wonderful presenting to you all.
Thank you, Chris. And let me just get myself organized here. Thank you, Chris. A lot of good insights there for our audience, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to talk again as we take on some questions later. And again, One Network, a global leader in, I guess, global data management and AI applications to support same. So thank you very much, Chris. Now, I'd like to call on our next speaker, Mr. Varun Singhi. He perhaps brings in a slightly different take on things, representing what could be termed as the other side of the proverbial table. We have Varun, who now brings several years of experience or operating experience working with large global retailers such as The Gap, and providing consulting services now to large corporations in the area of logistics and trade compliance. Varun will talk us through his views on the various influences that have been and are impacting the industry, and what supply chain leaders are now looking for as they prepare for the future. So Varun, thank you for being patient. I know you've got a lot of good insights to share. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Siddharth, and the CILT team for having me at this webinar. It should not start with the thank you. But yeah, I know it's always challenging to be the last presenter where you need to try to finish on time and leave some time for the question answer session also. I know I've
You're
just
good on time,
mentioned that
Varun, and we were just trying to save the best for last. So you're good on time. Go ahead.
it can be good for the best for the last time. The retail, I always talk about retail logistics, having spent about 23 years working for the retailers and then past 6 years working with the retailers in India for their supply chain needs. So I've mentioned the word retail logistics, and with my expertise on apparel, my whole presentation generally talks about apparel retail, but it's the same thing for all kind of businesses. It's not just apparel retail. So I'll just quickly run through some parts of the presentation. I know some part is already covered by Waldo and Chris. So the impact of large retailers, impact to the large retailers during COVID. Most of it we already know. There was demand forecasting challenges. Sorry, demand forecasting challenges. The sudden and unpredictable shifts in the consumer behavior. There was panic buying. There was supply shortages. There was enough inventory lying for clothing, but there were essential commodities like the food or the toilet rolls. Those are missing in the inventory management systems of many of the companies. So there was a lot of demand forecasting challenges which the retailers faced. Definitely, there was an increased e-commerce focus. There was a large surge in the online shopping as the consumers avoided going to the physical stores. What the retailers were trying to do was improving the website functionality or expanding their digital presence all across. They were leaving everything else to the supply chain players, so the logistics companies, to take care of the transportation and last mile deliveries. Similarly, there were supply chain disruptions. We all know there were factory closures in many parts of the world. There were shipping delays. There were transportation challenges. On top of the COVID-related, there were also a vessel stuck in the Suez Canal, which created a havoc for the shipping industry. Maritime industry takes care of more than 80% of the global trade. And there was a lot of dependency on the Suez Canal. So there was a lot of supply chain disruptions and transportation challenges. The retailers were trying to take protective measures, whether they were talking of people wearing PPE kits inside the warehouses at 40-degree temperature, 40 degrees Celsius in some parts of the world. But safety measures were important for the not just the staff, but also the customers coming into the retail chain. So those were the measures taken up. Last mile delivery was always a challenge. So many of the retailers were looking at the omni-channel where they could have the curbside pickups, not necessarily the physical pickup inside the store. People don't have to go inside. So omni-channel is something which was really visible during the COVID times. There were supply chain visibility issues also. The improved supply chain visibility became a priority for most of the retailers. In the past, there was some missing parts in supply chain, but now, of course, everybody's just looking at supply chain real-time visibility. Earlier, it was just visibility. Now, the importance of real-time visibility has come in. So sustainability, some of the sustainability initiatives were avoided during the COVID times because people were just worried. The retailers were worried. They wanted the goods to be on time. Sustainability took a slight bad beating on that part during the COVID time, not now. During the COVID time, that was one of the issue which came up for environmental and ethical practices. People were really not bothered to look at those kind of things. The purpose was bring in the goods somehow and sell it to the end consumers. So, and the agility and resilience, of course, the resilience is sort of a new word which was invented during COVID. It was always there in the past, but never in the focus. Now, resilience is everybody looks for resilience only, resilience and agility in the supply chain. I'll quickly run through what the new retailers are, large retailers are now thinking post-COVID. The changes really reflect the lessons learned during the pandemic and a broader shift towards resilience, agility, and sustainability also in the supply chain, which was slightly missing in the past. Resiliency and agility was missing in the past. Sustainability was avoided during the COVID because nobody really bothered about those things. But now the new thinking of retailers is the diversified supplier base. So people I know are talking about China plus. They want to reduce their dependencies on any one single source or any one single region as such to minimize their risks in the supply chain. So people are really having a discussion. The retailers are having discussions around collaborating with the suppliers who can really produce good quality goods at the right price and are near their selling base. So in the past, what had happened was all the American or the European retailers, that's where the retail industry is really focused on. Of course, we have great retail industry in Asia also, but everything came from US and Europe. And they shifted all the production based in Asia. So now there is a real strategic shift of the retailers in their procurement and operations practices. Everybody's talking of nearshoring, which is basically nearshoring and reshoring. Nearshoring is what you can have at looking at some of the regions within close proximity to the retailers, or reshoring, which is shifting to the domestic market. It's not that easy for anybody to shift overnight, but yeah, there are discussions happening now. If we take an example for US apparel retail, the local production is only 5%. Apparel requirements in US is the biggest retailer in apparel. 5% is only produced within USA, 95% is imported. So as Waldo also mentioned during his presentation, there is a discussion about there's a lot of factories being set up in Mexico. In the Southern American part, there are a lot of factories being set up. So it's closer to USA. So that's what really everybody's looking at is nearshoring. And linked to this nearshoring is also the retailers are looking at change in the Incoterms now. From FOB to DDP. They want the goods to be into their warehouses or into their distributions at the location where they need, so that they can avoid any kind of disruption in the supply chain. If the ocean transit time in the past was 30 days, they're looking at is 2 days. If the goods are already lying within USA, they can sell within USA, or they can bring it into their warehouses within 2 days if the goods are lying as delivered duty paid. I know from a customer perspective, it's a great idea, but from a supplier perspective, from a production factory perspective, it blocks the money, shifting from FOB terms to DDP. But there are discussions happening with small and medium-sized retailers and a few other big-sized retailers also. Large retailers are also looking at that. And of course, the advanced analytics and the AI to improve demand forecasting and inventory management. This involves really a balance between a lean inventory practices and maintaining the safety stocks for the critical time. So this is where AI is going to play a much bigger role compared to the past. Sustainability procurement. So the retailers are also now looking at sustainable sourcing and eco-friendly practices. So they're trying to source products and materials from suppliers with strong environmental and ethical standards. The companies, the back end, if they are doing really that kind of work upstream, if the retailers can find the factories, we are really sustainable, which are ethical in working. The retailers are really going to those kind of factories now. And some of the smaller factories will be a challenge. So the last mile delivery innovation, that's what the retailers are looking at. Drones, I'm not really sure how much can the drones be used for retail or for, but micro fulfillment centers are coming up all across to be closer to the end customers. So there's a need for autonomous vehicles equipped with all kind of data. So the data is all live, data is online. Autonomous vehicles, drones, and micro fulfillment centers are the key. This is what the retailers are looking forward for. And of course, as I said, the sustainable initiatives. They're trying to optimize transportation. I know in the past, everybody had said that lower emissions send it by ocean. Air freight or trucking is slightly higher emission. but not everything can move via the ocean mode. So transportation for optimizing the transportation for lower emissions. There's this whole discussion about circular economy practices wherever feasible, and adopting to the circular is a challenge, but yeah, everybody is really looking forward to that. Every retailer, every business is looking forward to that. Getting on to how can we as the logistics and supply chain players, we can really address the ongoing retailer needs. The real thing is the supply chain mapping. We need to develop supply chain maps which are identifiable for vulnerabilities or the bottlenecks in supply chain. Exact mapping, understanding not just the supply chain end-to-end, the transit times or the bottlenecks in supply chain, but understanding the dependencies on the regulatory affairs also, so that the customer can take an informed decision and really can mitigate the risk. So this is something, supply chain mapping is something which needs to be done by the supply chain experts and pass it on to the retailers. And certainly, of course, the sustainability standards for the suppliers, they're encouraging the growing consumers and regulatory demands for sustainable products. Every retailer is looking at that. Technology advancement or technology adoption is really the need of the hour. And resilience assessments. So resilience assessment, everybody is talking of resilience, but it has to be a continuous progress. It has to be continuous work. It's not a one-time exercise. To conduct resilience assessments, to really identify and address the weak points in the supply chain. This may involve some redundancy of the planning or alternative sourcing options or dual sourcing strategies. But resilience assessments is a regular flow. It cannot be a one-time exercise. That's what all the retailers are looking at from an upstream perspective, from a sourcing perspective. But downstream, going to the market perspective, every retailer is looking for the last mile innovation for the customers and the speed. So drones, the fulfillment centers, whatever it is, the idea is to reduce the delivery time and also the cost of delivery. The multi-channel retailing, as I said earlier, is the omni-channel is the solution. Every retailer will have to get into the omni-channel, smart warehouses, smart warehousing management systems, smart transportation management systems, and the multimodal transportation. In the past, everybody had been using ocean or air, but yeah, multimodal, you use combination of ocean and air and truck. I'll just show a brief video on the next slide on the multimodal transportation, what can happen, what's actually going to happen soon. I'll not cover up all but the cross-border expansion, the supply chain visibility, we all know. Cross-border expansion is something really coming up fast, where it's not just for B2B kind of a business, it's for B2C business also. So every retailer is looking at expanding cross-border for their online business also. That brings in the need for the reverse logistics also. It's a very complicated affair when you are talking of cross-border online business, and if there is a return, how do you handle that reverse logistics, taking care of all kind of regulatory requirements? That's a bit challenging. Though I've mentioned in the end is the people development and reskilling. I would say it's the most important point right now. People are scared that artificial intelligence is going to take away their jobs, or many of the other autonomous things being taken, automated decisions being taken. But people need to be redeveloped. There's a need for relearning logistics. It's not just the basic logistics we used to have about 40 years back, 30 years back. So by embracing these infrastructural changes and introducing new services, the logistics industry can really now position itself to meet the ever-evolving demands of the global trade. That's something really important which is required from the logistics supply chain professionals. This is the last slide I want to really talk about, is the watch out for what's the latest happenings. I know I've just listed 2-3 points. I know there are a lot of other discussions happening around on the global trade agreements, the free trade agreements, comprehensive economic partnership agreements. So recently, within this month at New Delhi in the G20 meeting, an agreement was signed for development of the India, Middle East and European Economic Corridor. is not just the logistics corridor, it's the economic corridor. The moment logistics develop this, the whole economy of these nations in India, Middle East, and Europe is going to grow in a big way. I just have a small video on how it's going to look like. Starting from Mumbai, the vessel moves about 2,000 kilometers into Dubai. So what I was talking in the previous slide about multimodal transportation. It goes by vessel. This is already linked up. But going into from Dubai via Saudi, Riyadh by train, it's really a multimodal transportation route. And getting into Jordan, Israel, and out from again onto a vessel. The vessel reaches Greece as the first port of call. And then this part is already developed. The trucking within Europe, getting into Europe, covering a distance of over 8,000 kilometers from India to Europe by multimodal transportation and ending at Hamburg in Germany. So this is really something great which is going to happen. We don't have the exact timelines. I've been hearing news about some $20 billion of investment being done. Even the US government is involved into this agreement. Though US is not a part of this economic corridor, but US government is involved, so probably trying to pitch in some money into that. The another one is the India-UK free trade agreement. There have been 13 rounds of discussions which have already happened on this part. The last one was this month only, and it's likely to be signed by the end of this year, 2023. And India-European Union Trade Pact, that's likely to be signed up sometime early next year. The sixth round of serious discussions, trade discussions, is happening next month in Brussels. So India-European Trade Pact is going to happen. And within the subcon region, I'm really looking at Bangladesh. Bangladesh is going to graduate out of their least developed country status in November 26. Bangladesh is already gearing. Bangladesh total exports, 84 to 85% of their export is apparel. And majority of it goes into Europe. How is that going to happen once Bangladesh graduates out of the early status and become a developing nation? It's already decided by the United Nations. There are a lot of things can change where they enjoy a duty-free status into Europe right now, and into Europe and UK and Canada and Japan and a few other countries. How is that going to come up? That's really something to watch out for. I know we have time for these things over the next between 1 year to 3 years. All this is going to happen, but we need to be very watchful of what's going to happen with these segments. A lot of economies will change. So the logistics industry need to be geared up to handle those things. So just in summary, I would say we need to prioritize cross-border e-commerce, nearshoring, watch out for trade compliance, trade agreements and investments from the government or the private sector. With the support of automation, end-to-end supply chain visibility and analytics to create a real resilient, sustainable, and innovative logistics supply chain. I think I end the presentation here. Thank you so much for your patient listening. And back over to you, Siddharth.
Thank you, Varun. I appreciate you sharing your views there, and a very interesting presentation and informative indeed for all of us, I am sure. I did want to quickly jump into some questions, but I see we've actually run up against the hour. So I think with that, we must bring today's discussion to a close. However, I do want to thank our audience for the questions that they sent in earlier, and I noticed one or two in the chat as well. We will make sure we get responses back to you on those. So do check the CILT website for responses to some of those questions. And with that, I'd like to thank all our speakers. Thank you, Waldo, Chris, and Varun for coming on and sharing your views on this Singapore morning. Very interesting perspectives, and you've certainly given us all much to think about, I am sure. And again, thank you to all of you that dialed in today. I certainly hope you found the discussion useful, and we do hope to see you again soon. So a very good day to all of you, and thank you very much. Goodbye.